俺の名はドン・キホーテ・ドフラミンゴ。
Don Quixote Doflamingo is one of the most beloved characters in One Piece. But instead of analyzing the man himself, I'm going to take a more indirect approach. I want to focus on the side characters who have suffered most under Doflamingo. I want to analyze their stories and in the process see what they can tell us about Doflamingo's character. His whole motif is manipulation, from his devil fruit to his character interactions. Because of that, it's important to look at how and why he manipulated these people. So we'll start with the most standout example. Doflamingo's crew is his found family. He takes outcasts who have been tossed aside and welcomes them into his fold. He does this because he sympathizes with them. Buffalo and Delager were orphans. Baby 5 was abandoned by her mother. Viola's family was torn apart by Doflamingo himself. While never elaborated, Sugar and Winnet were rescued from unfortunate circumstances. And this SBS entry spells out that Doflamingo pays close attention to the environment people grow up in. Children who have never known war and children who have never known peace have different values. And understanding those values makes them easier to control. With nowhere else to go, Doflamingo becomes their only rock to lean on, resulting in an almost godlike worship. And Trafalgar Law is the character most similar to Doflamingo, or at least he used to be. As children stripped of everything, they directed their anger towards the entire world. The important difference being how much they valued their own life. Doflamingo had a giant ego as a celestial dragon. He valued his life so greatly that he sought immortality. And Law, having his lifespan cut by the white lead disease, already considered his life forfeit. All that mattered was that he did as much damage as possible before he faded away. And this made the young, impressionable Law the perfect tool, the perfect addition to his family. Doflamingo created a crew of outcasts because he himself was an outcast. He sympathizes with them and their company comforts him, despite their status as disposable pawns. So if Law was more like him than any other, then Law was the only one who could take up the mantle of the Heartseed. But one clumsy wrench would interfere with that plan. Corozon was the first person to show Law love since his family died. He worried for him where no one else would, and went further than anyone in search for a cure. Corozon abandoned his fight against Doflamingo and his duty as a Marine for the sake of protecting Law's life. Something Law was ready to throw away for the sake of destruction is also something his new savior died for. And now that Law had a will to live and a source of love, he was no longer suited to be Doflamingo's tool. This change is represented perfectly by the Ope Ope no Mi, both symbolically and ironically. Corozon's gift to Law that came alongside a newfound will to live, and the cure to his disease, was in the shape of a heart. The devil fruit that would make him the perfect sacrifice to Doflamingo is also what gave Law the power to resist Doflamingo's control. Corozon says that Doflamingo was born evil, and yet Doflamingo and Corozon both saw so much of Doflamingo in Law. Corozon's attempts to save Law prove how he wishes he could have saved his brother. Doflamingo was too far gone, having lived his life obsessed with hate for so long. But Law was still young. If he could be shown love like Sengoku showed Corozon all those years ago, maybe he could be saved. If Corozon really believed that Doflamingo was pure evil down to his very core, he would have pulled the trigger that day. And he wouldn't have tried to set Law free. Corozon's sacrifice saved Law from the fate Doflamingo laid out. He no longer hates the world, but Corozon's death guaranteed that Law would hate Doflamingo. Doflamingo is so good at controlling anger because he feels it every second of every day. Because he hates everything, he's willing to be patient. He doesn't have to focus on any one person or object. He laughs because he is above his anger. He'll watch it all burn sooner or later. Law was steeped in his anger, and that caused him to act irrationally several times. Not only abandoning the plan to have Kaido attack Doflamingo, but he also tried fighting Doflamingo alone, only to get butchered. Before Dressrosa's end, Law still considered his life forfeit. His debt to Corozon just gave him a different cause to die for, which went against Corozon's final wish. His anger made it easy for Doflamingo to best him over and over. So why was it Luffy that defeated Doflamingo? Or more specifically, why was it Gear 4? The form that wears the face of an angry god. Why couldn't Doflamingo control Luffy's anger the same way he did Law's or anyone else in Dressrosa? It's because Luffy's anger isn't so personal, it's righteous. It's harder for Doflamingo to read people who are so selfless. Luffy and Usopp's ability to create allies anywhere becoming a huge thorn in his side. Sanji's stubborn chivalry ends up winning over Viola. Even Corozon betraying him and the Marines both for Law took him by surprise. Luffy claims that he's no hero, and yet fighting for the sake of people you just met is pretty heroic. He says pirates hog all the meat, and he wants to do just that. But in Wano, he sees firsthand what happens when pirates hog all the food for themselves, and he decides to feed those who are hungry. We see this to a lesser degree in both the Goa Kingdom and Dressrosa, two islands that are explicitly compared to one another by Sabo and Luffy. It makes them both sick to see people's freedoms, dreams, and loved ones taken away by people in power. Luffy isn't being pulled by one particular motivation to fight Doflamingo. His very kingdom makes him sick to his stomach, and in the process he carried the anger of characters like Law and others that we'll mention later in this video. Doflamingo finally met a source of rage that could break his strings. With Doflamingo finally defeated, Law could finally put the anger and hate behind him, and he's now truly as free as Corozon wanted to be, free to control the course of his life and pursue his dreams, mainly aiming to be Pirate King, but he also wants to investigate his own checkered fate. Law wants to understand the meaning of the D. It's what allowed him to talk to Corozon after all. I said Law put the anger behind him, but how will that change when he discovers the true history? What happens if he decides to directly fight the government that doomed his home and family to die? Will he get tied down in hate again, or will he embody a righteous anger carrying the tragedies of others on his back, just like Luffy did for him? Doflamingo believes himself to be divine, an existence more worthy than all others, a born king if not a god. So it's interesting to see him interact with the Riku dynasty, the royal family which ruled Dressrosa in the Don Quixote stead after they ascended to marry Joa. And whether intentional or not, Doflamingo would put the family and Rebecca specifically through the same torment he lived through. He would strip away their status and make them the targets of everyone's anger at the kingdom's injustice. By creating an enemy of the people, he could shine all the brighter as a benevolent king. Rebecca would become a combat slave and be harassed day in and day out, specifically for her bloodline. Scarlet would die scrounging for food, and Viola would have to surrender under the protection of a stronger faction, similar to how Doflamingo did with Kaido. And once the birdcage is set up, they would be hunted by the citizens of Dressrosa. Doflamingo takes joy in passing these tragedies down. The Celestial Dragons subjugated him to a cruel fate, and now he gets the chance to play God himself and torture others. Doflamingo's rule is a small reflection of how the world government rules. Because he was raised by Celestial Dragons, he carried those values even after becoming a pirate. The most consistent distinction made between the way Riku and Doflamingo ruled is that Riku kept the country and the surrounding islands as peaceful as he could, but Dressrosa itself was considered a rather poor country. While Doflamingo sold weapons and instigated conflict throughout the seas, and was able to give Dressrosa great wealth, Riku wanted everyone to be happy, while Doflamingo wants to create clear hierarchies, just as the world government does. Gladiators and spectators, humans and toys, the family and its king. He uses other similar methods such as revisionist history, oppression, and war profiteering to create a powerful country. Doflamingo says that all humans, even the most saintly priests, become excited at the sight of blood. After being beaten and tortured by the world for their revenge, he's convinced that humans are little more than beasts. But the Riku family directly challenges this belief. If all humans secretly want to see blood, why would Riku and his granddaughter Rebecca go through so much pain to avoid hurting others? However, most people don't have such a strong will. As long as Doflamingo makes it easy to kill, as long as he rewards people who kill, violence will come naturally, and he'll prove himself right. King Riku is good at diplomacy, but his unwillingness to use power leaves him vulnerable to people like Doflamingo. The real tragedy is that Doflamingo could only get away with this because he's a warlord. The Navy should protect an affiliated country like Dressrosa from pirates, but they made an exception because they wanted the power and resources Doflamingo could offer. Another character with strong beliefs of violence is Kiros. My favorite line of his being, "A beast can only be appreciated in its cage." His strength and anger can make for a great spectacle in the Colosseum, but he believes he won't ever be welcomed among actual humans again. This anxiety carries over to even the final chapters of the arc, where even after all is said and done, he still believes it's best for Rebecca to distance herself from him. He's killed before, so he's innately lower, and he doesn't even deserve to hold his own daughter without wearing gloves. Kiros buys into a similar perspective as Doflamingo. He thought he was inhuman and didn't deserve to hold his family. His remorse created a hierarchy of violent beasts and pure innocent humans. Kiros pushes himself down and limits his humanity similar to how Doflamingo limits the humanity of others. Kiros is yet to accept that violence or not, he's just as human as anyone. Maybe even more so because love, pain, and anger are what defines humanity in Dressrosa, and it's three emotions that drive Kiros' character. Whether he's overflowing with them, embracing them, or being deprived of them. Where Doflamingo is a man who controls all anger, wants to avoid pain at all costs, even emotional pain through fear of betrayal, and who loves nothing but himself. Overall, the Riku family are leaders who embrace their status as humans, where Doflamingo in his cruel ways rejects the notion that he's human while claiming to understand humanity. Because everyone in the kingdom is human, nobody is treated as a tool, and Kiros understands this. He teaches his gentle daughter Rebecca how to fight only in self-defense, and only out of necessity for his failing toy body. He would protect Rebecca and Riku with the sword because their gentle ways saved him throughout his life. While in Doflamingo's family, those who are not useful are thrown away as a rule. That's why the only Dressrosa citizens Doflamingo took interest in was the Tontada for their labor, Viola for her Delafruit, and Kiros for his strength. Rebecca and Riku's pacifism isn't a source of power or profit, and therefore has no place in Doflamingo's family or his country. But just because you're useful doesn't mean you're welcome in Doflamingo's family. Introduced in Jaya, Bellamy was as petty a pirate as you can imagine. He took to the sea because he wanted excitement and treasure. He picks fights at every corner, he'll steal whatever suits him, and this lifestyle is all he wants. Does Skypiea exist? Of course it can't. Pirates shouldn't concern themselves with fairy tales and impossible dreams. What could matter more than what's right in front of you? He's not cautiously skeptic like Nami, he's already made up his mind. Luffy and Zoro refuse to fight him back at Jaya because if they stop to fight every bozo who insults their dreams, they won't ever stop. It'll only serve to waste their energy and distract them from their goals. It's only when Luffy's being outright obstructed that he decides to fight, and it's over in an instant. All of Bellamy's empty insults based on his lack of experience, ambition, and imagination wash away with one strike from a man with true conviction. Luffy doesn't assume the Sky Island exists, the same way he doesn't assume the One Piece exists. And he doesn't want to know ahead of time. Not knowing makes the adventure all the more exciting. Any gold or prizes he finds at the end is just a bonus. And his curiosity and his ability to seek what can't be seen is rewarded with an adventure he'll never forget. In this story arc, Bellamy represents hedonism and a lack of curiosity, the opposite of the Skypieans who have nothing but faith. But after realizing how much stronger Luffy was and how he lived his life, Bellamy reconsiders his own choices. In a way, he found his own figure of faith and worship, and it was standing right behind him smiling the whole time. When we next see Bellamy, he's a changed man. After seeing the Sky Islands for himself, he's been inspired to aim higher in life, but most importantly, he doesn't pick petty fights anymore. He's found a goal to chase and he's putting his all into pursuing it. The story even had him dunk on one of Riku's soldiers who turned into a money-hungry mercenary, showing where he started and how far he's come. But despite all of his efforts, Doflamingo doesn't ever welcome him into his family. In fact, Bellamy is an eyesore, and he'd rather dispose of him. Bartolomeo is one of the most adorable characters the story has ever crafted, but it can be easy to miss how his reverence for Luffy could be compared to Bellamy's for the Doflamingo family. They both worship their captain like a god. Bartolomeo is more or less a luckier Bellamy, one who happened to choose a man more worthy of admiration. Luffy doesn't want to invite Bartolomeo or any of the fleet into his fold, but he doesn't abuse or manipulate that desire to join him. What would be a golden opportunity to Doflamingo is an outright burden to Luffy, so he lets them do as they please. Doflamingo hates Bellamy because Bellamy chose the pirate life. Despite being born into nobility, he chose to leave that comfortable life because Bellamy wants freedom and excitement. Doflamingo probably felt insulted when he heard Bellamy's story. Why would anyone choose to live down here, surrounded by dirt and filth, among lowly humans? As previously mentioned, Doflamingo's crew is largely made up of people who have been thrown away, the same way Doflamingo was ripped away from his home and mother. The life that he was thrown into, his personal hell, is everything Bellamy wants. What greater insult is there to the heavenly demon? To see Bellamy throw away his noble status the same way his father did, and to treat his personal hell as something to aspire to. Doflamingo never wanted freedom. He simply wanted to live in luxury as a celestial dragon. And after losing that right, he wanted to control everything he could get his hands on, and drag the dragons down with him. The only people he'll ever show compassion to are the people who have lived through his pain. Bellamy, being such a free spirit, could never understand the pain his crew feels. So despite his loyalty, despite his strength and glowing reputation, he would never be welcomed into the family. But Bellamy wouldn't let that deter him. Despite learning Doflamingo's true nature, Bellamy's loyalty didn't waver. His determination made him loyal to a fault. Even if the man he admires wasn't what he wanted, that was his mistake. He doesn't get to complain just because he didn't get the response he wanted. And besides, if he's gonna die here anyway, better be at the hand of his old enemy than at the hand of the man he idolized. And Doflamingo knew this. He understood Bellamy developed a sense of integrity. He no longer needed strings to control Bellamy's body, he already had his spirit. After losing his crew in search of Skypiea, being defeated again and seeing the man who defeated him topple Doflamingo, he no longer had any reasons to stay in Dressrosa. He was free to do anything and go anywhere once again. And where did Bellamy go? He became a flag maker, and last we saw he's working on some kind of straw hat design. Likely for the Grand Fleet, as Bellamy here is rounding out their cover story. Maybe he'll return to the fleet with a handful of flags so that they can all show their allegiance. Maybe with a new crew to boot, or maybe he'll return as just a humble flag maker. It brings the story full circle as Bellamy was introduced as a pirate holding Doflamingo's flag, and now he'll create flags for the Pirate King, the man who taught him to look up and see possibilities. While it's true that every villain can be given characterization through all their relationships and interactions, Doflamingo is such a strong example because manipulation is a core motif. It implies a degree of intentionality in all of his actions, big and small. Law and Corozon show us how Doflamingo manipulates those closest to him. The Riku family and Dressrosa citizen show us how he exploits the world at large in order to ruin it. Bellamy is a rare case that shows us what it takes for Doflamingo to go out of his way to torment someone. And Luffy shows us why you can't keep the little people down forever. These threads tied Dressrosa together to make an amazing story arc with a strong villain at its head. Thank you all for watching, like and sub if you want to see more, and if you like hearing me talk about One Piece, I have over 6 hours worth of ranting about bad One Piece opinions on my side channel, Evil Puff. Audio quality may vary.